only exporting capital, MG and Sherry plan to build factories in Mexico. However, given the current situation, these plans may fall through. With the backing of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, Chinese companies have quickly expanded overseas. They are not only exporting capital, but also communist ideology, a flood of counterfeit goods, and corruption. Meanwhile, the families of CCP officials and the owners of companies funded by the Chinese government are showing up around the world. Wealthy Chinese students driving luxury sports cars and elderly Chinese women spending heavily on luxury goods are often from these families. Many may think that Chinese investment could be a good way to boost the local economy, but along with Chinese investments come various traps. The Belt and Road Initiative has already provided many examples of this. A research lab at William and Mary University in Virginia shows that by the end of 2023, China had provided between 1.1 trillion and 1.5 trillion US dollars in loans to 20,000 projects across 165 developing countries. The report notes that nearly 80% of the countries that accepted China's loans are now facing fiscal difficulties. China's loans have largely gone towards building infrastructure projects like roads, airports, railways, and power plants, covering vast regions in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and beyond. These projects have contributed to economic growth in some countries and brought their governments closer to Beijing, making China the world's largest creditor nation. However, China's lending practices have drawn widespread criticism from the international community. Critics argue that China's lending, which often ignores the debt repayment capacity of the borrowing countries, is irresponsible and has led some developing nations into debt traps. Sri Lanka is a typical victim of China's debt trap. The Sri Lankan government went bankrupt because it couldn't repay its massive debt to China and ended up leasing its port to China as a form of repayment. African countries like Zambia, Ethiopia, and Ghana have also struggled to repay their Chinese loans. A report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, highlights two main ways in which China has exacerbated democratic backsliding in Latin America. One is promoting authoritarianism, and the other is protecting governments that have moved away from democracy. The report also notes that China's influence has had unintended consequences, increasing political instability and further eroding the rule of law. For example, Chinese companies have been willing to participate in regional corruption and unfair business practices, which has helped sustain long-standing corruption in the region. The findings of the report suggest that China has clearly played a role in encouraging and accelerating the democratic decline seen in the Western Hemisphere in recent years. CSIS also outlined how China has been influencing political dynamics in Latin America. China's Belt and Road Initiative entered the region in 2017, and to date, 22 countries have joined. Earlier this year, the CSIS released a research report analyzing the relationship between China's growing influence and the democratic backslide in Latin American countries. The report particularly focused on the economic dependence of these countries on Beijing, the export of authoritarianism from China to the region, and how China has facilitated corrupt activities in Latin American governments. Taking advantage of the Belt and Road Initiative, China has exerted influence over Latin American nations through a series of both governmental and non-governmental exchanges. The report states that between 2002 and 2017, the Chinese Communist Party's International Liaison Department engaged in over 300 interactions with 75 political parties in the region. These interactions helped Beijing promote its governance model and strengthened ties with both current and future leaders in these countries. Additionally, China has established 44 Confucius Institutes and 18 Confucius classrooms across the region's universities to export communist ideology. China expert Wang He summarized, "Through the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese Communist Party is exporting corruption, authoritarianism, and debt traps, with corruption being a particularly prominent issue." Since assuming office in December 2023, Argentine President Javier Milei made it clear that he did not want to establish ties with communist countries. Following his election victory, Argentina's relationship with China has soured, with all levels of cooperation coming to a halt. While Argentina was under the rule of the Kirchners between 2003 and 2015, China strategically utilized Argentina's geographic location to launch and invest in 26 projects, totaling $27 billion in investments. Currently, each project is at a different stage of development. Argentina's prolonged economic and political crises have complicated China's involvement in various infrastructure and technological initiatives in the country. Malay's government decided to halt negotiations for purchasing Chinese fighter jets, opting instead for US-made F-16s. Subsequently, after an incident involving Argentina's foreign minister meeting with Taiwanese representatives, China suspended its financing to Argentina. Additionally, at the end of last year, the Argentine government announced that President Milei had formally declined an invitation to join the BRICS group. This is the latest major policy shift since Milei took office and fulfilled his campaign promise to not align with communist countries. Milei's public decision to not join BRICS dealt a blow to China. For a long time, expanding BRICS has been a goal of the Chinese Communist Party, which views the group as a potential counterbalance to the Western-dominated world order. However, Milei's stance is clear. He will not promote or encourage relationships with dictators, communists, or those who do not respect peace or hold democratic values. Mexico's crackdown on the Yiwu international trademark is just the beginning. The deeper logic behind this event is the collaboration with the democratic nations, led by the US, to resist and contain the expansion and infiltration of communist ideology by China. This gradual withdrawal of Chinese enterprises from Mexico is a foreseeable development in the near future.